Cool. Can everybody hear me well? Okay. I'm getting a little feedback behind me, but that might not be helped. So, hey everyone, welcome to the joys of home-cooked apps. I am your host, Blake Watson. I'm a front-end developer and a side project enthusiast. I have a disability called spinal muscular atrophy, so it basically means that my muscle tone is in the trash. I'm not going to be a gymnast. Plausibly, I could turn out to be a supervillain. Time will tell. I use a lot of technology to adapt and get things done, including some home-cooked apps, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. I think even with all its faults, the state of technology right now is pretty amazing. I can sit at my house and click on a mouse and emanate in the glow of the photons coming at me off of a glass rectangle, and people will actually pay me to do that. So what a time to be alive. Speaking of people who pay me, I work remotely with MRI Technologies out of Houston, Texas. So the team I'm with, we're working on projects for NASA and Collins Aerospace. I primarily work on a suite of applications called Cosmic, which is like an internal web app that's used for tracking and managing like different parts related to the spacesuit. Before that, I worked at MagnoliaJS. Shout out to the best ad agency in Mississippi. Yeah, I said it. Before that, I was a web development enthusiast with no job for several years. So if you find yourself in that situation, don't give up. Probably follow Taylor's advice and the advice of the other talks you've seen, and they'll get you where you need to be. I'm excited to be back here at MagnoliaJS. Apologies to the other speakers that I'm mainly just here to watch Kenneth LaFrance between talks. I'm also a community sponsor for MagnoliaJS again. A Fine Start is my main side project. It's a new tab page browser extension, and I'll be talking more about that in a bit. But so I have difficulty traveling, but I had a lot of FOMO from all these great tech conferences going on all over the country and all over the world that I couldn't get to. And so frustrated with my options available, back in 2010, I wrote a blog on I wrote a post on my blog called Mississippi Needs a Web Conference. So I'm not saying that I'm responsible for MagnoliaJS, but I'm not saying I'm not either. So yeah, this is personal for me, and I'm very happy to support MagnoliaJS, and yeah, go download a FineStart.me because it's cool. If you want to follow along, I did this fancy QR code thing that I saw yesterday. I figured it out last night when I saw all y'all doing this yesterday, so that's cool. But I have a text version and a PDF and a bunch of links to the stuff I'm going to talk about here. So what am I talking about? What is a home-cooked app? All right, it's an app that you make for yourself to solve your own problem or just for your own enjoyment. And much like a home-cooked meal, you can share it with friends or family, but it's not designed for mass consumption. Home-cooked apps are not optimized for shareholders. There are no sales funnels. There's no user stories. There's no scrums. Personally, I never do stand-ups. These apps don't scale, and they don't have to because they're not designed for thousands or millions of users. These are the kind of apps that you make just for yourself or a handful of people. Yeah. I didn't invent this term, home-cooked app. This guy did, Robin Sloan. He's a New York Times best-selling author who calls himself, quote, the programming equivalent of a home cook. And he wrote an article that described this short-form video service that he made. So you're looking at a screenshot of it right there, and it just has a record button at the bottom, and you record a short video, and it shoots it off to the recipient, and they see that they have one, they look at it, and then it disappears. Super simple. That's it. And he built it because his family was using like a proprietary app that was being discontinued, but they really liked it, and they didn't like the options that were available. So he basically threw this together, and the important thing here is that this is not like a product that he made. It's not a service. It's not even an open source package you can get on GitHub. It's literally just something that him and his family use just for them. Now, I've been making these kind of apps for myself for years, but until I read his article, I didn't have a term to ascribe to this idea that you can just make something for yourself, and it doesn't have to be packaged up. It doesn't have to be mass distributed. And it's still, even if it's just you or a few people using it, it can still be successful. It's a different way of thinking about whether your app was a success or not. And I love this. I think it's a powerful idea. And I mean, I think developers do this all the time, maybe, like make little tools for themselves. But for some reason, when I read this article, it smacked me in the face. I thought, yeah, of course, you could just make something for yourself. Why not, Now, that's not to say you should never generalize or make your stuff useful for more people. Obviously, like the talks we heard this morning, like if you're making an app intended to be used by others, then you need to make your app as inclusive as possible. I'm just saying that not every app is intended to be used by anyone but you. So that's a thing that you can also do. I think back to my late grandfather. That's him at the bottom looking fly. He would often take to his workshop, and he would make custom things for himself and his family. He made like a cabinet for his wife. He made toys for us, the grandkids. He actually designed and built this really sophisticated system for locking down wheelchairs in the van. It was specifically for my brother and I, our wheelchairs and the big old Ford van that we had at the time. And when I was a kid, I would watch him do this stuff, and I would be mesmerized by his craftsmanship and his process. It was fun and creative and boundless, and the results of his work were immediately impactful for us, his family, and those he loved. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this build-it-yourself ethos would serve me very well later in life as a person with a disability. All right, enough backstory. So my job here is to convince you that you should build home-cooked apps for yourself. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples, and then I'll give you a little recipe to help you get started. So I think there are many good reasons, probably more than I thought of to list. But number one, you can make exactly what you want. Show of hands, how many of you have ever used an app and been like, man, this app is cool, but it'd be really nice if it just did this one extra thing? Yeah, okay. But instead, it's like, guess I'll make a feature request and wait around until the developer finally says they're not going to do it, hashtag won't fix. No, guess what? When you make a home-cooked app, then you get to make it do that thing that you want. Reason number two, if you build with the idea that you're just doing this for yourself or just a handful of people, you can skip over many of the challenging problems of software development. Compatibility, extensibility, standards, best practice, scaling, etc. In the land of home-cooked apps, the only important benchmark is, does it work for you? Another good reason is privacy. So you're building your own app. That means you have some control over, depending on what service you use. Maybe you're using the Web 5 thing, right? And you can keep your data out of, the hands of big corporations who may just want to harvest it up for their own purposes. And lastly, and the most important reason that I came up with is it's just fun. Making your own thing and then using it is very rewarding. Like, I love that positive feedback dopamine hit loop of like making a change and then hitting the refresh button and seeing the change. That's the sort of magic that pulled me into this field, way back when I started, and it's why I still love it. All right, I'm going to show you some examples. So these are going to start off more generally and then get increasingly weirdly specific. So I'm going to begin with this one that's breaking one of my own rules, because remember I said home-cooked apps aren't products, right? But this one ended up becoming a product. But I made it for myself ultimately, and what it is a single HTML file that would be like a new tab page. And it would let you hit an add button and it'd pop up a modal and you could add your favorite links and you could drag and drop and organize them how you want to. And at the time that I created this, the built-in new tab pages in browsers were very not great. Like they had gratuitous visual effects like giant, ugly screenshots of web pages, and like you couldn't have but like a few, pinned items or whatever. And I'm a person who has some difficulty typing, and I don't want to have to open up a new tab and type stuff in my search every time. So I just wanted like a whole page of just plain text links that I could click on. And so I ended up, like I said, I made that for me first, but then I packaged it up and that became a browser extension called Find Start. And that's cool that it worked out that way, but that's definitely not required in the world of home-cooked apps. All right, advertisement over. If you've never heard of Pinboard, this is a web app for keeping like your web bookmarks. And so it keeps like the URL, title, description, and then you can add tags and stuff for organization. I've been a long-time user of this app, and it met my needs adequately for a long time, but also it was kind of becoming the place where my bookmarks would go to die. I felt like retrieving things from it was not super easy, and I had paid for this extra feature that was like an archival feature, so it would mean that Pinboard would cache links that I would send it, and that way if that link goes bad, which URLs on the internet are wont to do, then I would still have my own copy of it. But I noticed that my archival account kind of wasn't working, or the feature wasn't working, and the whole thing was kind of becoming unenjoyable. So what to do? So you'll be shocked here that I made my own thing. So it's a Node.js app. It saves URLs along with metadata like the descriptions and tags and things. And you're looking at a screenshot right now of like, this is the sort of main view with the search at the top, and I've got some tags and some things are showing. And another cool feature is it uses the Wayback Machine, which if you don't know what the Wayback Machine is, that's a rabbit hole you definitely need to go down, because that thing saves versions of web pages from the past, like a long time ago too, which is cool. But a good side effect of that is you can use it. They have an API, and you can take archives of a page that exists right now, and that way their API will give you a URL back. You can store that, and now you always have the Wayback Machine copy along with the original. Now, just to be clear, this is an app that I made just for me. So like, this is not, you could try to go to that URL, but unless you're an elite hacker, or maybe just a mediocre hacker, you won't be able to get in. But I did sort of break my own rule, and I did open source this and put it on GitHub. Link is in my written version. But it comes with the huge caveat that I literally did not take anyone else into account except for myself, but it was easy enough to open source it, so did that. Next up is my family is constantly getting mixed up about how much money we owe each other. So a couple of weeks ago, I made this little app called Pay Me Now, which is in a really obscure reference to a really old lawyer commercial from the Golden Triangle area. Anyways, to help my family keep track of what we owe each other. So in this screenshot, you're looking at what I call the settle up screen. So it's like you pick two people, so Blake and Matt, me and my brother, and in this example, and it gives you a table of like, what do you owe each other for? What was it for? And like, it boils it all down to one number. So then, separately we'll get on the cash apps and we'll pay each other and break some thumbs and whatever. And then we come back here and hit the complete all payments button, and then that'll archive all those, and we can keep it going. I also enjoy doing a bit of creative writing. So every year I participate in this marathon writing event called National Novel Writing Month. I'm just curious, a show of hands, has anybody ever heard of this or attempted it? Hey, oh, a lot. Awesome, okay. So for those of you who don't know about it, it's a wild 30-day challenge to write a 50,000-word novel in the month of November. So it often means I'm scrambling to invent my story on the fly. That's what they call doing it by the seat of your pants, AKA I'm a pantser. So I ordered this deck of cards. It's called Writer Emergency Pack. And it's a thing for storytelling, and it's got, like every card has advice on how to get your story unstuck. And it gives you new ways to think about like your characters and your plot and stuff. And they're awesome, but my problem is I can't physically handle a deck of cards. So what I did was I had my assistant help me scan in all the cards, front and back, and then I created this little web viewer. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot of it, and I'm able to sort through the cards, like draw up a card at random, draw multiple cards out onto the table and look at them, flip them over to read the back, zoom in. Pretty much anything you might do with like the physical deck. So this is a project that, because of copyrights, I can't link to, but there's a link to the actual Writer Emergency Pack deck in my notes, if you want it. So this is where it gets weirdly specific. My brother and I have a team of caregivers that work with us, and they work various day and night shifts. And at the end of each pay period, they have to turn in these really detailed timesheets. And sometimes they're just tedious and error prone. And so I wanted a way to keep up with my own records and also give them something that could help them fill them out. So I messed around briefly with a spreadsheet because that seemed like the right answer, but I know they're powerful, but I just really hate spreadsheets. They're awful, I don't like them. So I decided what I really need was something like Markdown, like a plain text thing is what I wanted. And I'm real lazy, so I needed to make a really good lazy syntax. So this is what it looks like. This is like in a little example. And so yeah, a line that begins with a hash, that's a comment. We can ignore that. And then it's like a list of like shift entries, I guess you could call them. Each of them are 2 lines. They're separated by an empty line. So if you look at that top one there, it's like, it starts with the date of the month. So date 1, the word day means they work the day shift. So that could be like day or night, day shift, night shift. And then on the next line, the name of the person who worked. And then if you kind of look at the night one, it's sort of the same, but you have to do a time range because, a night actually goes over midnight into the next day, which is part of the reason that these timesheets are confusing. And then day shift and a night shift, they have a standard time range, so I don't need to specify the time, which that was something I was having to do in the spreadsheets. That was annoying. I'm sure there was a way to get around that, but if I do need to specify a time override, then I can do that in parentheses after at the end of the top line. And then the last little bit of metadata that you can see at the bottom is I put a little asterisk by that one. So that means that my brother and I were both together and the caregiver worked with both of us, which means they'll need to fill out 2 different timesheets and split up the hours. So I made this little front-end tool that can process the syntax, and it will spit out a table of dates and times and that I can print. So this is where I paste in the data, and then, yeah, you may have noticed I didn't provide the month or the year on the previous screen because I don't want to write that a bunch of times or have to parse it at all, so I just do that on the form here. And then this is an example printout, which it's hard to tell what's going on here, which that's basically the reason I made this in the first place. Because we have these timesheets that they're just terribly designed, and the agency requires that they're filled out by hand. So I have to print this, and then my caregivers can use this as like a go-by to sort of make sure they get everything. So I didn't know this at the time that I created it, but this kind of thing has a name. It's called a domain-specific language. So like in this case, it's a human-readable computer language designed specifically for tracking caregiver hours, but exactly trained to my specific use case. I store all of my records as plain text in my bare notes. So you can think of that as like the source code, and then you can think of that little front-end tool as sort of the compiler, and then it will output the HTML. Actually, this year, 2023, marks 1 decade since I first made this app, And I'm sure I would do it much differently now. It's got a bunch of idiosyncrasies and a whole lot of jQuery and everything, but it gets the job done. And honestly, it's held up longer than many other things I've made. So props to that guy for chugging along. I also put out a forum and took some submissions on some other apps that people have made, and I got back some cool responses. All right, so this is a Scout's dashboard. Scout is a dog who has epilepsy, and her owner, Gaston, made this page that keeps track of her seizures, and he shares it with friends and family who want to know how she's doing. So it's got some nice charts and graphs and things. It has like her seizures broken down by time of day, day of the week, or even phase of the moon. And then it also categorizes her seizures into 3 different types because they're not all the same. And so each like time breakdown splits out further into those. And then it has descriptions of like what her symptoms are like and like what her behavior is like. And it's just a sweet little personal thing that's just, incredibly useful to the people who need that. Spencer said, quote, "I have started keeping a note in my phone where I had a timestamp every time I am intimate with the feeling of an indomitable joy of / gratitude for life. It's a Siri shortcut now." And what I love about this is that it's an app made with just like the no-code tools that were lying around. You might not think of it as an app, but it's tools like this that can enable even more people to make software that's specific to what they need. Here's the lightning round of all the ones I got. David made a breastfeeding tracker for his partner that just asks you the question, which side? And when you hit the button, it records the time, puts it in local storage, and saves it until the next time. And that's it. It's literally just a 2-button app. Felix struggled with being lonely after starting his degree. So he made an app where you put in your achievements, and then after a short little loading sequence, it gives you a compliment. Simon submitted a grocery store or a grocery list app that he created for him and his wife. And I love this because he just said no to the 1,000,001 list apps out there, and now there's 1,000,002 out there. Riley's friend had a laptop where the screen would flicker, but only if the GPU dropped below a certain temperature. So Riley created a program called Burninator, which makes the GPU do work and stay warm so the screen doesn't flicker. We've gotten to the part of the talk where the literal cooking is happening. All right, so I give you a little recipe. Now these apps that I showed, some of them could be useful to you, but I'm not expecting you to think like, oh, I could use that app. The point is to get your creative juices flowing about, what apps you could make for yourself. So this is just a little recipe to get you started. There's no real right or wrong way. You can use any kind of technology you want, anything like that. But think of a problem of yours that you could solve, or think of something that you want for your own enjoyment or your friends' enjoyment. This could be like something that solves a boring, tedious thing that you have to do, or your friends want like a better chat app or something. Like it could be something a popular app does, but you want to do it in a specific way, or more private or what have you. And then once you have a general idea, give yourself some requirements. You can make a list. If it has a UI, you can do like a little napkin sketch or something. I like to go into my bare notes and just type out a list of features I need, make a few notes about the behavior, how it's going to work. It's important at this stage not to don't make that bulleted list too large because you don't want to kill this thing on the vine. You might have heard of the MVP, or the minimum viable product. So that's like the idea that you define like the least amount of features that you need to accomplish the goal. But it's actually even easier in this case because we're not making a product. So let's call this the minimum viable meal. That's your job as the home cook to figure out, but it's a simpler, rougher thing than I think even an MVP is. The main thing is to solve your problem though, and not like an abstract user's problem. This might seem like an obvious thing, but like when you start doing non-general things, at least in my experience, my developer instincts start shooting up all kind of red flags like, you shouldn't do this specifically. Why are you doing this? You need to accommodate the general person, but that's in a home-cooked app, that's not the case. So think of the easiest way to get to your goal. There's no need to make things super complicated. I mean, unless you're into that. We're all developers after all. But my advice here is just use what you know. You can use any technology you want. It could be new and shiny. It could be old and boring. Another shout out to jQuery if you want to use that. Or no JavaScript at all. Shout out to the anti-JavaScript JavaScript club. This thing you're building just needs to work for you, so you can adopt whatever technical debt you want. Yeah, the important thing is to make sure that everything you're doing is in service of just getting this thing to work. Now, even if it's sort of a larger project, just make small progress toward it. It's pretty amazing how much small progress over time can snowball into a big thing. I've written about tips for finishing side projects, so I got a link to that in my notes. But TLDR, small progress adds up. You can use your commit history, so that's like an automatic thing of all your accomplishments. And if you use that other app I was talking about, you can paste in your commit history, and then you'll get a compliment back after a few seconds. Hopefully, it won't take too long to sort of knock out that minimum viable mill. And then you can make enhancements and bug fixes, to it later after you've got it going. That's pretty much every app, I guess. I think most of them has probably taken me a weekend or two because they're usually very stripped down. And you have the freedom to do literally just whatever you want, so you can take shortcuts. But I think the time investment, even on the longer projects, is totally worth it. That timesheet thing has probably saved me entire days of time, just looking at timesheets and poring over making sure there's no errors and things. So yeah, totally worth it. Yeah, hopefully this had you thinking about how you could tackle a problem of yours or just make something fun for your friends and your family. I think these kind of apps are fun and useful and a breath of fresh air. So go forth, cook up some of your own apps, and if you do, tell me about it. You can find me at these places, although Twitter sucks. I don't know. I'm on Mastodon most of the time now, but anyways, tell me about it. DMs are open, and yeah, thanks for listening to my talk.